right, with that, we go to one more session before the break. And let me introduce our next host for the fireside chat. Matt Michelsen is like a remarkable entrepreneur and investor, and he has one of the most amazing networks in Silicon Valley. He has been last year with us at Techsylvania Live, so he is a returning speaker. And I want to especially thank him for jumping on short notice to moderate this. I know that he is always up to some fun, so I really do appreciate that. We had a really good time last year around the racetrack, and I'm really grateful that he's like coming back to us. So for this, he will have a talk with Fred Turner about a topic that's extremely relevant for all of us: scaling COVID-19 testing across all of the US. Please welcome Matt and Fred. Thanks, guys, for joining us.
Yeah, great to see everyone again. I mean, so sad that I couldn't bring actually Fred to Techsylvania in Romania this year. I mean, it was a wonderful time, and yeah, the racetrack was amazing. Luckily, we didn't crash. But changing gears here, earlier this year, we were looking at how we could help the situation with COVID, and we found Fred Turner, and Fred Turner was working on a project which was not COVID related, and he pivoted his company. So today I'm going to talk with Fred about the journey that he's been on, and we can learn a little bit more about Fred. But it's been an unbelievable journey. I've actually been involved in over a dozen unicorn Series A or below, and none of them have compared to the energy and the momentum that we've experienced at Curative. So I've been intimately involved in really traveling with Fred and learning about it. So let's get to it. So Fred, you look like a really young guy, right? I think everyone says you dropped out of Cambridge. I mean, when did you start referring to yourself as a scientist?
Yeah, the first time I really got into science and working on this sort of stuff, I think I was about 15, and I read Craig Venter's autobiography and really wanted to sequence my own genome. But I grew up in the north of England, and no one would let me into any kind of lab to actually use any equipment and do anything like that. And so I decided that obviously the logical solution then is to try and build the equipment. And so I spent about a year while I was still in high school building a PCR machine from the ground up. About $250 worth of parts, took about a year to build it, and it actually worked pretty well, and ended up winning an engineering competition in the UK with it. I got a bunch of outreach from some farmers, like cattle farmers in England, that want to use it to test their animals. And that's how the first company I was working on got born out of that.
And you were testing animals. What were you testing them for?
We were testing beef and dairy cows to predict how well they were going to perform. How much milk is a cow going to make from the day it's born?
And what happened with that company?
The market wasn't big enough. That company did move to the US. So we did it in the UK for a couple of years, and then it came out to the US, went through YC, raised a seed round, but then there aren't enough cows in the US to build a venture scale business there.
Wow. So then Curative this year, earlier this year, you were doing sepsis testing, right? Tell me a little bit about that and what happened, and what you thought was going to happen.
Yeah, so Curative was initially founded not even really as a diagnostic company, but almost an insurance play on sepsis. So trying to take septic patients and assume financial responsibility for them, and then use a combination of data and diagnostics and better tools to get a better outcome for those patients. That was the initial what Curative was founded to do, and we did that for all of about 6 weeks before we got distracted by what was going on in the world. And I think it was basically mid-February when we were about to kick off a clinical trial on the sepsis work we were doing. And there's this collaborator we'd been working with, and he was usually the super responsive guy at a hospital in Wisconsin. And he would always answer the phone, jump on a call in 5 minutes. And he canceled a call, or his assistant canceled a call we had scheduled and pushed it back to late June because he was preparing for the hospital's COVID response. And this was just so unlike that guy. That was the first indication, for me at least, that, okay, this is going to be bigger than maybe I had anticipated. maybe we should be looking at doing something to help with COVID.
And when we found you were just starting to test in Los Angeles, I mean, early March, and you were doing tests. I mean, tell me a little bit about that, and how many employees you had then, and a little more on the test.
Yes, I think it was the last week of February or first week of March that we decided to jump into this, and the company at that point was about 7 people. We were based out of Menlo Park, and we were working on the sepsis thing, and we decided pretty much over about a 2-day period that we should jump into the COVID diagnostic space. Just looking at the landscape of testing, it was pretty clear that the supply chain for testing was really designed to scale maybe to 1.1x or 1.2x, but not to 100x, and that the US was going to have nowhere close to the amount of testing that was needed. And the founding team of Curative had a lot of background building clinical labs that all worked together on a previous clinical lab. Vlad, our chief scientific officer, had 10 FDA cleared tests that he'd built at a previous company. So we knew the space well, and decided to jump in, and it all moved pretty quickly. I think on the Monday, I was trying to find a clinical lab with the type of license that we need to partner with. We found one by Wednesday, but it was in LA. So we all moved down to LA, signed an agreement with them by Friday, and we were testing by the following Wednesday.
Wow. Yeah, and that literally very shortly after that, we met, and I mean, from there, you've scaled to 1 million, the ability to do 1 million tests per week in multiple laboratories. I mean, how were you able to do that?
Yeah, it's really been hiring great people and hiring a lot of people very fast. So we've gone from 7 people to well over 1,200 people now in about 6 months, and it's really been the team coming together to execute and get us up to that lab capacity. I think one of the things that we've done that's been really interesting is bring together a group of excellent scientists with the background in building clear labs, building FDA authorized diagnostic tests, with a bunch of ex-military logistics experts who know how to move samples from point A to point B in the most efficient way, how to move equipment around, how to get the lab stood up and do all of the build out. And putting those two very different cultures together and having them gel and work well is what has let us scale up really fast.
Yeah, I mean, I remember a trip that we originally went to Florida, and Florida, asked us to test their nursing facilities. And I mean, maybe you can talk a little bit about that and tell everybody about, what the project was and the scope of the project and what we were able to achieve there.
Yeah, so in Florida, the state had been trying to do some testing of their nursing homes, but the state of Florida has 3,800 nursing homes and assisted living facilities, and a couple of other 1,000 group homes and intermediate care facilities, and they're spread all over the state. And so there was this problem of how do you test not even the residents of those facilities, but mostly the employees, because those are the ones that move around, that go to dinner, that go to a bar, get COVID and bring it into a facility. And so they wanted to have this testing program, but you have these facilities that are just spread out in every corner of the state, ranging from 1 employee to 1,500 employees. So they brought us in to solve that problem, and we came in, and within 5 days we deployed about 200,000 kits, doing drop shipping of kits to every single one of these facilities all across the entire state. I think about 6,000 facilities right now that we're drop shipping to, coordinating all of the return logistics to get those back to the lab same day, and then obviously doing the lab processing to get them results in about 24 hours from when we get the sample. The other bit we had to do is just a massive training piece of how do you train 3,800 nursing homes to use a piece of software when they're not particularly the most tech savvy people in the world, the people who operate nursing homes. Training them to use the software, to scan in the barcode, to actually use the kits and get those samples back, and doing that all in the period of a couple of weeks. So I think overall, we've now shipped about 1.5 million kits out to nursing homes and assisted living facilities across the state of Florida. And the program is a really great demonstration of exactly how well testing works. We started the program, we had about a 3% positivity rate in employees in nursing homes. And over a 90-day period, we've driven that down to, I think it's about 0.6% right now. And you can also see the dramatic effect it's had on the mortality rate of residents in the Florida nursing homes. If you look at other similar states that have similar per capita COVID cases, so Mississippi, Louisiana, other states like that, what you can see is they have significantly higher mortality rates in their nursing homes than Florida does, even though the number of cases per person in the state is roughly the same. And when you back calculate the effect that that's had, we estimate it saved about 3,700 lives in nursing homes in Florida.
Wow. So
yeah.
let's shift gears here, and let's talk about labs. I mean, you started by taking over a lab, but then you've built a number of labs. I mean, how have you done that? And what is that involved? What is a COVID lab?
Yeah, there's obviously the physical infrastructure that has to be in place in terms of space, the special air handling needs that are required, and then power. When we built our DC lab, which is a 50,000 square foot facility that's capable of doing over 100,000 tests per day. It started off as a bus terminal. It was basically an empty shell of a warehouse that we came into, and the build out process was about 10 days. It was a crew of 200 people doing construction. The building didn't have enough power to it, so we had a extra power pole installed into the building to bring in another 3,000 amps. It was really just a lot of creative solutions and a lot of people working around the clock to make it happen. Usually those kind of build outs would take months. But I think there's been a really good unifying force that when people know you're working on COVID testing, everybody rallies behind getting stuff done fast. The contractors, the landlord, the power company in DC, everybody wants more COVID testing. And so everybody really comes together to actually get this stuff done as fast as it can possibly be done, and not on the usual bureaucratic schedules of getting an extra power pole installed.
So something you haven't mentioned and we haven't talked about yet, but is who is Curative testing right now? I mean, it's testing. I mean, the lab was originally stood up for DoD, right? But who else? I mean, where are you getting samples from? Yeah,
so the California lab is getting samples from Los Angeles, Berkeley, and now starting to expand further over California. We have the new lab in Austin in Texas, where we're getting samples from all over the state of Texas, Texas prison system, National Guard, drive-through sites, walk-up sites. We also have testing sites in Delaware, Wyoming, Louisiana. We obviously have the Florida nursing homes, but we also have walk-up and drive-through sites across Florida as well. We have testing in Washington, D.C., trying to remember, Chicago. We have a number of drive-through sites, and we're about to deploy some more testing there. Anything else that I've missed? A lot of places across the country.
Yeah, it's been unbelievable. I mean, doing that, and I guess that leads me to maybe you can speak a little bit about COVID and where Curative goes from here, but what your vision, because I think a lot of people will really wonder what's going to happen next, right? I mean, everyone I think thought it was going away, schools are going back, football starting, but we're not seeing that at Curative, are we?
Right. I think we're definitely not out of the woods yet. There's this phenomena that we saw in June earlier this year, where we go over the top of the peak of the curve. And cases start going down because testing and isolation and masks work. But then people see it going down and they stop doing those things. They go back to normal, they open schools, they open restaurants, and they go about their normal lives. The problem is the effect of doing those things is delayed about 3 to 4 weeks. So you don't see the effects of people's actions for about a month after it. And so people keep going because nothing bad happens if they went to a restaurant last night. And then in a month, you start to see this surge of cases. So we're starting to see it really pick up again now. It's been picking up in Europe very significantly over the last couple of weeks. We're starting to see case counts go up. I think the US really needs to keep doing those things when it's going down, and then we can actually get COVID down to a manageable level. Realistically, COVID is going to continue to be a significant problem and limit the amount of reopening that we can do until there's a vaccine. We'll see what happens in the next few months around the election and a vaccine being available, but mass vaccination is likely not going to be available until the middle of next year. And so we're going to be doing or having a need to do COVID testing at scale for at least the next 6 months. I think one of the significant things that we're working on and trying to hopefully bring online in the next couple of weeks is testing for other respiratory viruses as well as COVID. As we go into the typical respiratory season, so November, December, January, usually you would see a lot of people with flu, you'd see a lot of people with rhinovirus, other things, and often you can't actually do anything about those if you detect it, and so it's not really worth testing for them. The problem is this year, anybody who has one of those other respiratory viruses is going to freak out when they have symptoms and think that they have COVID. And so they're going to go get a COVID test. It's going to be negative. They're going to have heard in the media that some tests don't have, or some tests produce false negatives, and they're going to go get 10 more COVID tests. And this is going to use up a whole bunch of tests. And so what we're trying to do is be able to tell them, okay, you don't have COVID, you have flu, you have RSV, you have X other virus, and that explains why you have symptoms. And I think that will give people a lot more peace of mind when they're symptomatic.
So this is kind of a little curveball, but I have a curative test right here, and this is the curative test. So maybe you can walk me through what I need to do with this curative test, Fred. I mean, there's a bunch of things in here. There's a swab, there's a vial here, and it has a barcode. Maybe you can tell me a little bit about what I need to do here.
Yeah, so one of the key things I think we've been able to do to make testing easier is to make it this oral fluid swab. So instead of having to get something, a swab shoved up your nose 3 inches by a healthcare worker, you can swab the inside of your own mouth. So the process is you basically cough 3 times into your own arm, and that releases virus from the lungs that comes up and gets caught in your saliva. There's already actually virus in your saliva as well. So when you're collecting, you're getting a double sample of respiratory tract and saliva at the same time. So you do the cough 3 times, then you're going to take the swab out of its sterile package, swab the inside of your mouth, your cheeks, around your gums, across the back of your tongue for 20 seconds, and then put that swab into the tube. And the tube has a preservative that immediately kills the virus. So it can be shipped at room temperature. It's stable for up to 5 days. You don't have to worry about refrigerating it. And you don't have to worry about it being infectious. And that makes it a lot easier for us to handle it in the lab as well.
So here goes, right? I'm going to do this.
Let's do it.
See, right?
It's self-collected, but observed.
Coughing, good cough, right? Good cough.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. This is a no-brainer. Doesn't have to clean up my nose, huh?
Exactly. And so I think for regular testing of people where you want to be testing employees, you have to have something that is not painful and easy for them to do. There you go.
That's it.
Put it in the bag and send it off to the lab. Done.
Perfect. I mean, that's unbelievable. I mean, what do you do post COVID, Fred? I mean, what happens to Curative? I mean, where does it go?
Yeah, so we're starting to use the distribution network that we've built to deliver other things now. So we have drive-throughs in many states, walk-up sites. We have these kiosks, which are like self-contained, almost vending machines for getting a COVID test, but with a person inside. And we have mobile vans that drive all around and deliver testing. We're starting to use those to do other things like give out flu vaccines, do flu tests. Eventually, we'll hopefully be distributing the COVID vaccine when that becomes available, and trying to make these a much more accessible way to get a test for any kind of thing you might want to test for. And so we think these could be a great method of sample collection in a post-COVID world where people don't want to sit in a primary care office for an hour and wait for a doctor to see them. They can see a doctor over telemedicine, and if they need to get a test done, they can go to a kiosk or a mobile van and very quickly get the sample taken. So we think it could be a very, a new way of basically seeking primary care across the country.
Yeah, I mean, everything's changed, right? I mean, even what we're doing right now. I mean, it's funny, I saw your dog, it was awesome. I mean, we're working out of our homes where, I mean, our entire life has changed for COVID. So, I mean, we're really hopeful for the vaccine. I know you've done a lot of work on it, and a number of the people on the team are very talented and pursued it. So, I mean, thank you very much for the time today. I think we're just about wrapping up, but I mean, what a maybe I think we have one more minute. Anything you want to cover, Fred, in the last minute?
I think just that as a country and as well, the whole world, we really have to double down when we see the numbers go down. That means what we're doing is working, and we need to keep doing it until we get the virus under control. When we relax things, when the numbers drop off, that just leads to it spiking again. And if we keep going through these cycles of spiking before we get a vaccine, it's going to lead to tens of thousands of unnecessary deaths.
There you go. I think we're just at time there.
Excellent. All right. Thanks for moderating.
That was amazing. Thank you so much, both. Thank you for making us all safer. I do really appreciate it. So, and thanks for both being with us here live today in Texavania.
Yeah, we can't wait to come. I'm going to bring Fred there. I promise I'll bring him next year.
Yeah, hopefully we can crush COVID so that we can be there in person next year.
Awesome. Amazing. Thanks both. Thank you.